Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into a specific guide. It's titled Reasons Millennials and Gen Z Hate Your Church and What You Can Do About It.
Right. And this comes from ACS Technologies. They've been in the church software and services space for, well, nearly 4 decades now.
Quite a while. So they've seen some shifts, presumably.
You'd think so. And the guide, it lays out its goal pretty clearly. It wants to help churches understand these younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, and crucially, how to actually engage them.
Not just understand, but act.
Exactly. They talk about turning ideas into real ministry impact. So our job today is really to unpack the perspective offered in this guide. What reasons does it give for this disconnect?
And it starts by saying something important, I think, that millennials, they aren't a monolith, not one big group.
Which is fair, of course. But the guide does argue that, well, studies show trends. There are common threads.
And they bring in Gen Z, too, noting similarities but also differences. It's their framework, basically.
It is. And the first big thing they tackle, what they call the core problem, might be a bit surprising.
Oh.
How so? Well, the guide suggests, based on the data they're looking at, that millennials and Gen Z are actually just as spiritual as older generations.
Really? Because you often hear the opposite.
I know, but this source says they still believe in God, they hold to absolutes, they pray, maybe even more in some cases.
Huh. Okay. So if spirituality isn't the core issue, what is?
It's the connection to the institution. The guide cites Pew Research, the big polling group, saying that despite being spiritual, these generations are way less engaged with church affiliation, like historically low levels in the U.S.
Less affiliation, but maybe not less spirituality overall. That's a nuance.
It is. And then they layer on Gen Z specifically. They say Gen Z is twice as likely to identify as atheist, valuing, the guide says, tangible reality over a purely spiritual one.
Okay, so that adds complexity. Spirituality might be there for many, but church connection is down. And for the youngest cohort, atheism is, well, more prevalent.
Right. So the guide asks, why? Why this disconnect between potential spirituality and actual religious, church-based engagement?
What's the bridge that's missing, according to them?
They suggest it boils down to values, maybe even the language used. The guide highlights a few key words that really resonate with these generations when they think about church or, anywhere they invest their time.
Okay, what are they?
Authenticity, purpose, relationships, community, and serving.
Those are definitely big themes you hear a lot about.
For sure. The guide emphasizes that these generations, they really want to be part of something real, something that matters. They have, let's say, a low tolerance for fake stuff.
A good BS detector, maybe.
You could put it that way.
Yeah.
They want to find God or explore faith within a genuine community, and they want to be on a mission, like making a tangible difference.
And Gen Z. Similar, but with a twist.
Yeah. The guide notes they share these values, but put an even higher premium on individualism and pragmatism. They really value real-world experience.
Right, you mentioned that. Less polish, more raw reality.
Exactly. And this leads to what the guide sees as a paradox.
Okay.
These things, they value authenticity, community, purpose, impact. The guide argues these are exactly what the church, at its best, is supposed to offer.
So the potential is there, in theory.
That's the guide's point. But the involvement is declining. So the guide is trying to explain why that connection isn't happening and what, from their perspective, churches can do.
Which brings us to their list of reasons. Let's dig into those.
Let's do it.
All right, reason number 1, according to this guide, your vision is too narrow. What do they mean by that?
Essentially, they're saying younger adults want the big picture. They want to see the outcome, the benefit, the why behind it all. If a church's vision feels small or, only focused inward.
That's not compelling enough.
Right. They want to see how it impacts people from all walks of life, not just the people already inside. The vision needs to feel big, ambitious even.
And communication is key here, I assume.
Absolutely crucial. The guide stresses you need to communicate that vision constantly at the macro level, the big mission, and the micro level, how this specific event or task connects back.
I'll give you an example, right, about poverty.
Yeah, like if the big vision is eliminate poverty in our neighborhood, then when you have, say, a job fair.
You explicitly link it.
Exactly. You tell the volunteers, your work here is directly helping us achieve that huge goal. It makes their contribution feel critical, not just like busy work. It shows the connection.
Makes sense. Connects the dots.
Okay.
Okay, what's reason number 2? This one sounds kind of harsh. Your community is a sham.
Yeah, it's blunt language,
Yeah.
but it ties directly back to those values, relationships,
The
communal.
things they supposedly value highly.
Right. The source cites Barna research suggesting relationships are the #1 reason millennials go to church. So
Right.
if that community doesn't feel genuine, if it feels superficial or cliquey,
Like a sham.
then they're not going to engage. They won't stick around. Strong relationships, a connected community, the guide says these are absolutely essential.
And they emphasize face-to-face stuff too, right? Especially for Gen Z.
They really do. They say there's no getting around that reality. Even in our digital world, especially for Gen Z, who value that real world experience, actual time spent together in person is vital, despite the challenges, busy lives and all that.
Okay. Makes sense. Reason number 3. You're not transparent. It feels like a big one today.
It's presented as critical. The guide says while relationships might draw millennials in, it's hypocrisy or a lack of transparency that's the #1 reason they'll leave.
Wow. Number 1 reason for leaving. That's significant.
It is. And for Gen Z, the guide suggests their tolerance is even lower. They have less tolerance for hidden agendas and are more likely to call out whatever is behind the curtain.
They grew up online. Maybe they're just more attuned to spin.
Could be. The guide suggests they can sense when things are hidden, when cliques are forming, when behavior feels manipulative. Trying to hide things just backfires.
So what's the solution offered? Just say you're transparent?
No, it needs to be practical. They suggest tools. Things like online giving reports showing where money goes, public group listings so people can see who's involved and how to connect with privacy controls, obviously.
Visible proof, essentially.
Exactly. It's about showing, not just telling. This helps millennials feel like they're truly part of it, and it lets Gen Z see their own potential impact more clearly.
Got it. Okay, moving on. Reason number 4. You lack unity.
This is about that shared purpose,
Yeah.
sticking together, working towards a common goal. The guide says millennials want to do something together that actually matters.
So it's not just about believing the same things, but doing things together.
Right. Getting together for real ministry, as the guide puts it. Shared activities, projects that builds unity.
Okay, but then there's reason 4.5, which sounds like the opposite. You lack individuality. How do those two fit together?
Yeah, it seems like a contradiction at first glance. But the guide argues it's about balance. Especially with Gen Z, they say there's a stronger focus on individual needs and desires.
Less likely to just jump on board for the greater good without seeing what's in it for them personally.
That's the idea presented. They're less likely to sacrifice their individual desires unless they see how their own needs are also met or acknowledged.
So, unity in mission, but recognition of the individual within that mission.
Precisely. The guide suggests ministries need to connect personally, highlight individual contributions sometimes, honor achievements. It's about customizing things, communication, event options, ways to get involved at different levels, respecting individual capacity while still aiming for that shared goal.
A tricky balance to strike, I imagine.
Definitely. And that leads to the 5th main reason. You aren't challenging them.
This one surprised me a bit. You often hear about needing to make things easy or accessible.
The guide pushes back on that. It argues millennials aren't scared of a challenge, and Gen Z actually welcomes it. The idea is a bigger challenge can lead to greater buy-in, more ownership.
They want substance.
That's the claim. They come to church, according to this source, looking to discover, grow, mature, make a difference. They don't want weak suggestions or flaccid prescriptions. They're serious about faith and want to be challenged.
Interesting. So those are the big 5, according to this guide.
Yeah.
But there was more, right? A kind of rapid-fire list.
Yeah, a bunch more reasons. We can hit some highlights like trying too hard to be cool instead of just being real or normal. Apparently, normal is valued.
Authenticity again. Don't try so hard.
Right. Also, budget focus. If it looks like all the money goes to buildings or programs, not people, that's a turnoff. They need to see how resources help actual people.
Makes sense. What else?
Not caring about the experience. The whole journey needs to feel meaningful. Issues with money talk, either being secretive or pretending it doesn't take money. Just be honest.
And the jeans are too tight comment?
Haha, yeah. Basically, don't try to be them. Just accept them. Authenticity over imitation.
What about online presence?
Huge one. If you're not on Instagram, Snapchat, wherever they are, you're practically invisible.
And the content itself?
Needs to be relevant. Address real-life stuff like depression, bullying, societal issues, alongside the usual topics.
And maybe not just Sunday mornings.
Right. Consider other times midweek options. And things need to make sense. Show how faith works in real life, not just abstractly.
One last one stuck out to me. The attitude.
Ah, yes. Avoiding the it's not you, it's them vibe. The focus needs to be on how ministry impacts their lives, meeting them where they are.
That's quite a list. A lot of potential friction points identified there.
It is. And pulling it all together, the guide's main argument is that engaging these generations isn't just nice to have, it's, well, crucial for the church's future.
But they're careful to say it's not about, what was it, coddling.
Right, not coddling, changing the gospel, or capitulating to their every whim. It's framed as understanding them, who they are, what makes them tick, so the message can actually connect authentically.
Connecting with their values, their perceptions.
Exactly, in a way that feels real to them. And, since it's from a tech company,
They mention their software.
naturally, they position their product, Realm, as a tool to help churches do these things better. Communication, community building, transparency, managing activities, all that stuff.
Okay, so stepping back from the guide itself,
Yeah.
why should you, our listener, care about this specific take?
Well, I think because it really highlights a major shift in how younger generations relate to institutions, particularly faith-based ones.
It poses a challenge, doesn't it?
Really does. If the church does offer or could offer these things that millennials and Gen Z value so much, authenticity, community, purpose.
Then why the disconnect? Why, according to this source, are they looking elsewhere or disengaging?
What does that struggle tell us? Maybe about the gap between what an institution says it offers and how it's actually perceived or experienced.
Especially when authenticity and seeing a real impact are so highly valued.
It really pushes you to think about communication, about transparency, about how people today find meaning and belonging. It's not just about churches, perhaps.
That alignment piece seems key
Yep.
between the promise and the reality.
Definitely. How well does what's offered actually land with the people you're trying to reach?
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this ACS Technologies Guide on millennials, Gen Z, and the church.
We looked at that core tension. They're described as spiritual, valuing authenticity and community, but often less engaged with the institutional church.
And we walk through the guide's main reasons why narrow vision, community feeling like a sham, lack of transparency, issues around unity versus individuality, not enough challenge, plus that whole list of other factors.
And the guide's core argument, the church could be uniquely positioned to meet these needs, but there's work to do on connection.
So here's that final thought for you to chew on based on this material. This guide focuses on the church, but what does the struggle is? It describes the challenge of connecting with younger generations who crave authenticity and impact reveal more broadly. What does it tell us about any institution trying to engage people today when those values are paramount? What does it reveal about how connection, meaning, and belonging are sought and found in our current moment?